Welcome back, I'm Tedward. Welcome to Garage 42 in Acton, Massachusetts, where I store my cars. And welcome to one of the Depreciation Society's crown jewels of their collection. This is the 1996 Bentley Turbo R SE, SE for Special Edition. And in true Depreciation Society collection form, this car means something to the brand because Bentley was struggling. In the early 80s, the Mulsanne Turbo was failing and Rolls-Royce was outpacing them. And that's not to say too much about them. They weren't selling a whole lot of cars either. But Bentley was really on the outs. And when Mike Dunn came in, they were proposing a new model that was going to be based on the sluggish sales of the Mulsanne Turbo, and they were going to increase its stiffness and make it a little more sporting by 10%. Well, he came in and said, no, make it stiffer by 50%. And out of that essentially was born the more sporting Turbo R. R standing for road holding. Kind of awkward, but that's the way it goes in crew, as evidenced by the license plate that you'll see on this car. So from 1985 to 1999, they ran this car in true Bentley and Rolls-Royce form. It's based on a chassis from the ancient times, but somehow they always made them feel ultra luxurious and managed to have a posh stance on the road that always told others, I'm better than you. This Luxo Barge is a tricky thing to own though, because while the entry prices can be appealing, sometimes, $40,000 or less really for decent looking cars, to properly maintain them costs real money. You got to have a guy, and that guy knows what he's worth. So this one, I hope it's okay to say this has over 6 figures into it after its $40,000 entry price. So let's take a look around. Under the hood is a 6 3/4 liter turbocharged V8, that engine we know and love. It's been in everything. And if this car seems a little familiar to the Rolls-Royce Flying Spur that we drove before, well, it basically is that car, just with different suspension and interior appointments. Let's get under this hood. It's also, because it's a later model, this being a 96, and like I said, this is an SE, a special edition. They made 12 of these. This is number 6 of 12. It gets the 4-speed 4L80 transmission from General Motors, as opposed to the earlier cars getting the 3-speed turbo hydromatic. And if the 4L80 sounds familiar to you, it's because you or your parents or your grandparents probably owned 1 or 2 or 3 of them in their Silverados, their Tahoes, their Suburbans, or even the Hummer H1. But in addition to those family trucksters and pickup trucks, Bentley and Rolls-Royce employed GM transmissions in their ultra uber luxury vehicles. So under here, this is always such a joy to see. And unlike the earliest versions of these cars, it doesn't run the brakes and steering on mineral oil, which these often would leak. So if you did have a mineral oil leak or shortage, you would lose brakes and steering at the same time. This one's a little bit safer. Gluing us to the road on a 17-inch wheel is a 255 section tire, and behind these wheels you'll actually notice a set of 2 brake calipers, things that we've seen on the Maybach 57 and even the Corniche when I drove that the other day. So it is fun to see the similarities and differences between some of these cars. When you walk by the vast length of this thing, we are greeted at the rear with these gorgeous red badges. I think this is great, and it starts to really show off the width of the Turbo R. It is not small. And under here, got a few things in the trunk here, but not as vast as you'd expect. Plenty of space, but the space is genuinely designed for those rear passengers, not necessarily for a whole bunch of stuff in the back, but you can make that happen. A keen eye would notice that this is not black, it's actually emerald black, so it has a lot of green, and you have a green coach line that goes across the entire side of the car. But inside, there's no question that there's green. This has the sport interior, so it has the 2-tone black and green, and then of course, gorgeous wood trim everywhere with aluminum HVAC controls, and everything you touch on this car is going to be impeccable. In fact, even the headliner is green, and it's really cool how they kind of separated out the sides with this center stripe. And then in true Bentley and Rolls-Royce form, you get the mirror right here, surrounded by wood, lovely lights. Everything in this car works. knock on wood, because hopefully it remains that way, but it's definitely a labor of love to keep these cars alive and well. So let's start it up and go for a drive, because I'm really excited. Oh, I love when the rear passengers get their own cigarette lighters and ashtrays, because of course you'd be sitting back here just puffing away, ruining your interior. But hey, maybe you're a dad and your kids just need a cigarette on the way to polo practice. Here's our key. It's a left entrance on the ignition over here. Let's see, am I upside down? I'm upside down. What a pleb. All the noises this makes are pretty outrageous. It is funny to see electronics in the dashboard in some of these older cars. You always expect them to be purely analog. Over here, you've got analog gauges for your water temp, your oil pressure, your fuel, and your fuel gauge is also an oil level gauge. If you notice, it says min oil level right there with a red line. If we hit this button down here, it will change that to an oil level gauge, so that way we know we're good to go on the oil, a clock, and your battery. Here we have Bentley Turbo RSE, number 6 of 12. We can pop that open to the radio. And then, let's see, is this it's an ashtray. More ashtrays. You gotta have ashtrays, man. Everybody's smoking. And then we'll close that up for the look. Down here are our seat controls, memories, seat heaters to stage. This is pretty nice stuff. This steering wheel is all wood, and it's always goofy just to see these steering wheels, because they just seem like they weren't designed to have airbags in them. They seem like they were designed to be the old school giant steering wheels like we saw in the Corniche. But we'll close up this vault. It is quite lovely in here. This is really, really special. There are steering wheel controls here, so that can move up and down. It does not telescope as far as I can tell. And then our shifter, to get it into gear, you pull up, there's reverse, neutral, oops, I went too far, there's drive. Okay, we're in. I have the parking brake on, I didn't push it that hard. Now that's up and ready to go. Oh, I feel like I have such an elevated driving position here. It's hard to describe just how smooth this feels. Oh, wow. And even on these slow little roads here, please take a right. No? Not gonna do it? You're just gonna sit there real slow? Okay. I'm relaxed. I'm in my Luxo Barge. What in the world could rush me in my Bentley? But you do notice, even on these slow little roads, that it is relatively stiff. I mean, I've driven all of the Rolls-Royce versions of these things, and they're usually so supple that there's so much body roll. It almost feels dangerous. Like if you had to make an aggressive lane change in a Corniche, you'd feel like you were gonna drag the side of the car on the highway to do it. And this, I actually do feel like it has some sporting chops. Relative to a sports car, no. Relative to a Rolls-Royce, absolutely. And a keen eye would also notice the red line on this tachometer. If you're unfamiliar with the 6 3/4 liter V8, you'll now learn that they are very low revving. This only revs out to 4,500 RPM, and this is a very old engine design that was reiterated and evolved over many, many decades. All the controls, everything's just at your fingertips. You never have to wonder where stuff is. New cars don't do that. New cars, I have to fiddle with a screen, and I have to feel like I'm my grandparents asking me how to check their email on their iPad, and that's not a life I want to live behind the wheel. Head down here. Oh, I want to drive this in a major city. There's something about piloting a Rolls Royce, a Maybach, a Bentley in kind of tight spaces that feels really special. I don't know. I mean, they're great highway cruisers, don't get me wrong, but something about navigating back roads and city streets in these cars is just unbelievable. So we're going to do our best to let this thing warm up properly, because I guess the Achilles heel on these typically is head gaskets, and running them cold is what will do them in. Something about Bentleys like this remind you that Bentley has racing chops. In the early days, Bentley built cars to race. I mean, that's what cars were. You know, of course they were luxurious and designed to appeal to certain types of people. That guy was really tall. That was like the largest bike frame I've probably ever seen. That wasn't comical. But despite being uber luxury and posh and supposed to have some, social impact on your neighbors, to say like, look, I'm clearly better than you. You drive a Mercedes and I drive a Bentley. Bentley did race cars, and for whatever reason, this kind of lets you know that they did. That guy cranking in the CR-V is telling me there's likely no speed traps ahead, so that's helpful. It's still absolutely soaking up bumps, but it is not the Corniche. This is not as soft. It's funny, I'm hearing some like creaks and stuff, but the creaks don't sound like things that are loose. It honestly just sounds like things that are so tight, like they're on the leather. That's why they're creaking, not because they're falling apart. Big old nose. Wow. I just was not expecting this to handle the way it did. I know that Bentley is the sports car and Rolls-Royce is the luxury car, but like, let's be real. It's still huge and it's based on the same platform. How sporty could it be? But yet, you can kind of chuck it into a corner. You're not going to bring it to a racetrack, but it will tackle some roads with gusto and confidence, which is just surprising. These brakes give it confidence too. I'm not afraid of it. You can chuck this around. Why? Oh my goodness. This must have been so cool to feel in 1996. Little throttle goes a long way in this thing. It's quick. Like, it's actually quick. Let's do a quick lap around this airport. I always just like to see the planes. And then we're going to talk about price, because I do think it's pretty remarkable what people were spending on these Bentleys back in period and what that looks like today. I don't even didn't know what that was. Okay, let's park here for 1 second, and then we're going to talk about how much it cost to buy this car in 1996. Just in case the car gets smart and locks itself. I usually don't stop mid-video, but I just want to get out and look at this thing. Okay, so 1996. This cost $199,500. In today's money, that's just shy of 400 grand. I don't know, man. I think it's kind of worth it. I know that you're getting a GM transmission and a 30-year-old chassis, an engine that's been around since the dawn of time, but somehow it's greater than the sum of its sort of parts bin parts. It's amazing what they do with these cars. Anyway, back on the road. I just want to keep driving, but sometimes you just got to get out and look at this thing because it's such a historical behemoth. This must consume fuel on a level that very few things can. Maybe that 9.9 liter Lingenfelter Suburban consumes fuel a little bit like that. And I believe they share a transmission, at least architecturally. Maybe it's a slightly different version, but I do think we're in the same ballpark with the 4L80. I could get used to this. Now, this being like a really pristine, perfect, and restored example should not, I don't know how to say this. I'm not giving you financial advice, but this should not deter you from going for a lesser car or buying one at a reasonable rate and living with some of its flaws. Like if some of these windows didn't work, it would not bother me. I would not care. If a door didn't work, if some of those little things were broken, as long as powertrain, drivetrain were intact and it wasn't just leaking all over the place, I would be pretty happy driving around in a rattier version of this car. This one is just so pristine and perfect that it's it's hard not to love. But I don't want to dissuade someone from their Bentley dreams because they don't have six figures to restore one. And the possibility to own these cars for a relatively small amount of money, especially relative to what the average car costs brand new today. Average car is something like $45,000 or $49,000 today. This could be had. You've got to have an appetite for failure, and that's okay. But maybe if even for a short time you live out your Bentley Turbo R dreams, I think you won't regret it. Let's see, there's no one around. I want to hear what this horn is like. Pretty average. I was hoping for something a little more theatrical. Let's head down here. Oh, these brakes feel magnificent. Shift out of this transmission. You can make fun of it all you want for being a GM. but boy, do they work well in these high torque applications. Ooh, yes to the Lotus, a British friend. Please don't ruin my on-ramp. Thank you. Still good? Yeah, you're good. Of course, we've got a Stady who's going to stop in the middle of the road here. Oh, well, if we're going to be interrupted, I suppose that's something. Even putting your foot to the floor feels luxurious, like it just doesn't need it, and I slowly added, and it just kept going and going, and it was just shocking that it continued to pull. I was not expecting this to have this kind of power. Oh yeah. What a beast. Look at this. Tracking pretty darn straight. I know this CRV is going to go slow, and the real shame of it is those CRVs handle really well. I've vlogged them around all kinds of mountain roads out in Southern California. And if you've got a Bentley Turbo R painting your backside, it means you could probably go faster. But we keep enough distance to protect paint. I think 4 car lengths is pretty much painting their backside when it comes to what you want to do in this car. You don't want to get so close that you chip anything. In a construction zone is no match for the Turbo R. When I've done my over-the-shoulder check, I honestly get distracted by the beauty of the rear seat. Like, it's hard to look at traffic when you're like, wow, look at the wood in the mirror and that beautiful hand pull, and every detail in this car is just a joy to look at. You gotta keep your eyes on the prize, man. You gotta drive the car first. You gotta really focus on driving first and then admiring the car you're in second. I know this is just a quick one, and I really hope to spend a lot more time in this car on a road trip or going somewhere special with it, but this particular Turbo R SE is just beyond my expectations of its drivability. I saw this car a few years ago when it first came into Garage 42, when Garage 42 was up in Woburn. And I thought it was beautiful. It was a gorgeous car. I didn't realize the level of sort of restoration and mechanical finesse that they were going to apply to this going forward, bringing it back to its original sort of glory and drivability. This is magical. And it's not just because the car is wonderful. It's also, my goodness, what is with people? This girl, total right away, not a soul to impede her turn, comes to almost a complete stop, and you don't use a blinker. What are we doing, man? Just unbelievable. No one knows how to drive. And that's why we drive defensively in our Bentley Turbo R. But it's not just about its power, its elegance, its capability and handling. It's also about its story, because the Bentley Turbo R really is the car that saved modern Bentley. Yeah, we're getting the thumbs up, baby. This brought them out of probably failure, right? And we see them come near failure again, right, later on, and that's when the Continental GT really comes to save the day. And now Bentley has outrageous sales figures. They sell tons of cars. They've got an SUV that, like, normal rich people buy. They're no longer only selling 400 cars a year. But this was, dare I say, a paradigm shift in the 80s to get them back in the game and revive the brand for another 20 years before its next big jump. We're going to yield. There's no reason to put this wide car against a GMC. And that's what my friend over at the Depreciation Society is all about. He's all about bookend cars, important cars, the first of an era, the last of an era. He really has a fun collection because although the cars are all great, they all mean something to the history of the brand that they represent and wear their badges proudly. And this one is no different, especially being slightly rare, being number 6 of 12 of the special edition models. So I am going to go bring this back into the garage where it hopefully doesn't sit for too long because it deserves to be driven. Let's see, we'll follow Edwin in another another Depreciation Society car. That is the pre-merger AMG that he just took out to Illinois. We've driven that car before as well. That's really special. That's a monster. That's so cool. And again, more Depreciation Society Luxo barges. That one's more about power and speed than luxury and finesse, but we'll jump in behind him. Put these bad boys away. So thank you so much for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. Thanks to Garage 42 for making these cars so easily accessible, and thanks to the Depreciation Society for the opportunity to drive another one of these glorious beasts. This is just the absolute coolest. So let's see. I think I'll just pull this up to these fellas, and we're good. Good. And we'll let them put this away because, good God, this thing is large. Ooh, I miss the Azure. So thank you guys so much for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. Don't forget to respect the drive, and I'll see you in the next one. Ooh, let's see what color. Oh, yeah, that looks good. Ah, this car's good.